Today what I want to talk about is this one simple fact. I can't protect my daughter forever. Every Friday, my daughter and I get up. Basically, whenever she decides to get up, we try to push it a little bit, as close to 7 as possible, but sometimes it's pretty early. We get up and we go downstairs and we make a cup of coffee for me, and we get her a yogurt pop, which is just one of those yogurt tubes that we've stuck in the freezer. Don't tell her, she loves them. And then we head to swimming. And while I was at swimming today, I had a revelation about my role as a dad. I can't protect my daughter forever. See, we were at swimming, and it was our first time there. It was only week 2 of this year's semester of swimming lessons. And week 2, right away, we were doing underwater passes, and it was brilliant. My daughter absolutely loves the water. But this is what we had to do. I'm in the water with my daughter, and we're having a blast. And then all of a sudden, the teacher comes over. He says, "Hey, I'm going to take your kid. I'm going to go over half the distance of the section that we were in, and I'm going to push her to you underwater." And dude's a pro. I'm not worried about that at all. So here we go. Like, we go up and down, and then push and release, and let her glide underwater. And then the craziest thing is, I've got to do that. So I catch her and scoop her up, and she's loving it and having a great time. And then it's my turn. I've got to go up, whoop, and down into the water, and then whoop, pass her along to this swim coach. And as I'm doing this, whoop, up and down and underwater and pass, I realize that I can't protect her forever. That there's going to be a moment where I've got to let go, and she's gonna glide on her own. And on the one hand, that sounds all happy, and she's gonna glide underwater on her own. But on the other hand, it got me thinking, like, there are gonna be moments where I can't prevent her from pain or suffering or grief or difficult times. And in those moments, it got me thinking, what am I gonna do as a dad? So today's video is actually a portion of an interview that I did with a friend of mine, Alex Douglas. He's a pastor, and he's also a dad, but he wrote a children's book, it's just been released, on how to talk to your kid about grief. It's brilliant. So we get into it. We talk about how to talk to your kid. And again, like, it could be your kid, it could be a niece or a nephew, or a kid you work with at church or in your life as a caregiver, at school, wherever. But it's all about how to talk to this kid who's going through a difficult time. So I think it's really going to be beneficial, and I wanted to share it with you.
My wife is a social worker and has been instrumental in my learning about emotions. I grew up in a very emotionally constipated family that, we talked about emotions once and decided we'd never do it again. Yeah. And, but this idea that we wanted something more for our kids. And if it's something I want for my kids, it's something that I feel is valuable for all, because I get my lead from Jesus, right? And so and part of that is this, again, that the message from the world is happy all the time. You know, my 8-year-old daughter was given a shirt that said always be happy, and I would love that. I remember holding her for the first time and just sort of looking at her and getting this moment of like, oh my goodness, you're going to experience things that I can't protect you from. And just going, I wish I could, sweetheart. And I remember saying that to her, like, I wish I could protect you from everything, but I'm not going to be able to, right? And just like, all right, God, Lion King, here's your daughter back. Take her and bless her. Yeah. But life is hard and increasingly hard for children. And seasons like grief really landslide little people. They feel deeply, they care deeply. The relationships they have with family members are so much more profound than we give them credit for. And I think we're understanding these things a little bit, but you know, when a grandparent dies, even, and this is within the context of a faith family, I would say fewer and fewer kids wonder where grandma and grandpa went. Because I think as a faith, we do a good job of teaching you don't need to worry about grandma and grandpa in that way. But there's still this child who's left feeling sad that grandma and grandpa aren't there, or aunt or uncle, or even mom and dad, or a sibling. That it's so what do I do then? If I know they're okay, I'm not. So how do I get on with my life? And it's not okay to be sad. Okay. I don't want to be sad because mom and dad, it's mom's mom or dad's dad or you know, they should be way sadder than I am. I can't possibly make this about me. Kids saddle all of that stuff, and it's a lot for them to carry.
Yeah. And I think the reality, and you alluded to this, is that kids feel all these things often before they can articulate.
Oh, absolutely.
And so they may not be able to articulate, oh, that's mom's mom, or dad's dad, whoever has passed away. But they know it.
Yes.
And so like we're trying to, you know, our daughter is just almost 2. Yeah. She'll be 2 in February. And so my wife and I will sometimes have these funny conversations with her, and we'll say, so my daughter calls my dad Opa.
Yeah.
And so I'll say, you know, Opa is Daddy's dad.
Yeah.
And she kind of goes,
No. There's only one dad.
Wait, what?
That's you.
But you can tell she's wrestling it through, right?
Yeah.
And at some point they make that connection, and it oftentimes I think is just before they can even articulate it, and so the language isn't there to even get out what they're feeling.
Sure.
And so I think often the best resources are resources that give permission and give language. Yeah. And I think that you've done that really well in the book.
Thanks.
And first off for the kid, but second for the parent as well.
That's the benefit of children's resources, is that it provides a wonderful gateway for us to bless parents with stuff that they might not be looking for themselves. Yeah. Right? Like they'll look at their child having a hard time and go, I need to help them, but not make the same efforts to help themselves. And so, and I mean, this is true of children's ministry in general, that you can get away with teaching adults stuff that they would never seek out themselves by calling it for the kids. But I think that's certainly one of the goals of this book, was to, you know, and one of the reasons why I pursued a picture book, a sit down in your lap and read together book, that you go through together. It's not about someone reading it to you, you know, or a poem that you recite and you have to assemble it in your mind kind of thing, which are good and have their own place. Sure. But there's something very special about the transference that happens between parent, child, caregiver, and child when they read a book together. And it allows the adult to enter into what the child is going through, and inevitably, you know, when a question comes up, the parent has the same set of tools that the kid has, the same deck of cards to play with, and it allows for that to happen a lot more easily.
So there's one line in here that I just think is brilliant. So you're right. My mom came to sit because she is sad too.
Right.
I just go like that. That is as a pastor, to give a parent permission, and not that we need to give parents permission, but like that's one of the beauties of it, is that we get to encourage, and that's, I think it is,
Yeah.
give parents permission to display their emotions in front of their kids.
Oh, it's so important.
Because that's how, I mean, kids learn by mimicking.
Yes.
Right? Like
Yeah.
that's how they learn concepts and language, and
Yeah.
so for a parent to just simply be able to read that line
Yeah.
when maybe they don't even know how to
Right.
articulate or demonstrate their
Yeah.
emotions.
And my hope and prayer is that, as a parent who is, maybe they haven't read the book over themselves before they sit down for the first time with a little one, in reading that line can then say, that's why mommy's here with you now. Mommy's sad too, or daddy's sad too, or grandma's sad too, or whoever it is that we provide those, like you said, it's you model it so that it can be passed on. And it's so important for our kids to know, and it's good for them to know their parents aren't perfect. And that we have growing to do too.
Would you say that that's one of the number one strategies for dealing with grief or addressing grief with your children?
Yeah.
And again, you're saying this like that could be your children.
Sure.
It could be,
Yeah.
children that you work with at a church or school, wherever, right?
Yeah.
Grandkids. But working with your children, like, is that one of the best strategies?
I think so, because it's real and honest. There's a lot that we can stumble into as parents by projecting something that isn't us, right? It's the, trying to institute a system of organization that's just not you, right? It's going to work once or twice, and then it'll degrade over time, and you'll never get it back. And that's a defeat, because then you feel like you failed at that. But if you start with what you know, right? Like, my wife and I started out, and it was lists. That's not me. But as soon as I created some illustrated charts for our kids, they were in it to win it. And it was a win for all of us, because I felt like I was able to enter into what they were wrestling with and provide them a solution. We did it together. We sat down. I said, what do we need? Okay, we got to get dressed. All right. What do we do? Shirts. Yep. Good. Socks, shoes. Chime in. Oh, we need mittens in the wintertime. Mittens in the wintertime. Draw the mittens in, right? And it was a win for all of us. And it's absolutely the same with our emotions. To come at it from that perspective of, I'm there too, and this is what daddy's feeling. This is why daddy's feeling this, right? Like the whole idea that we can't be sad is really and ironic. So we can't be sad because we're supposed to be happy, but where does happiness come from? It comes from love. It comes from profound experiences. If you're sad, it's because something wonderful has happened and it's gone, right? And so to enrich that relationship and say, hey, sweetheart, the reason you're sad is because you love that person. And that's okay. It's a good thing. It means you loved your grandma. It means you had a special relationship, and it means we'll miss her. Like we will. Right? Like there's a grandma-shaped hole in our life right now. And nothing will refill that. It won't always be there, which is part of the message of the book as well. That's to say, the season of grief is a real one, and it's a profound one. But also, in terms of God's promises, it's that it won't last forever, right? That it won't always sting as much as it does today. And, you talked about the example that's set. We always have Jesus to turn back to, which is the powerful thing. And with an emotion like grief, there's a lot that we don't have spelled out for us in terms of how Jesus lived and how he responded to things. We know he cried when his friend Lazarus died.
Right.
We know he experienced intense emotion. And for us to be able to say, hey guys, look, this is right here in front of us. Jesus was sad. It's okay to be sad. God gives us that permission. Yeah.
So number one thing to say for caregivers, parents with kids experiencing grief is to give permission.
Absolutely.
Right? Give permission for the grief, for the emotion, for the feelings, for the lack of focus or distraction or, whatever it is.
Yeah. My wife would say, and this is 10 points for her, is validate. Is just validate. It doesn't say that what happened is okay.
Right.
Or that you have to be okay with it.
Right.
But what you're feeling is totally legitimate to what has happened.
Right.
Right? That validate that moment, validate the struggle, validate the sadness, whatever it is. Let them know that it's okay and totally understandable that they're where they are right now. Yeah.
And that doesn't even, like, that's not even to say that their emotion is telling them something that is necessarily true.
No, absolutely.
Right? It's just that it's okay for you to be where you're at.
Yeah.
And then after that support is in place, you can say, and here's what we know, right? Because that's the weirdest thing about that I find about emotions, is that sometimes emotions are telling us exactly what we need to hear about ourselves. And other times they're lying to our face.
Absolutely.
And it just depends on the situation, right?
Totally.
But at the end of the day, to find that out or to figure that out, you need to at least recognize, oh, I am feeling something.
Right.
It's okay that I'm feeling something. That's probably going to affect how I interact with people for at least a short period of time.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
And we know there's more.
Yeah.
So obviously, like in the book, you do make the turn to Jesus.
Yeah.
You know, as someone who comes alongside you in your grief, as one who himself suffered and grieved, which I just think is a great promise, right? Like the hope of Christianity, ultimately, we know is found in the resurrection.
Yeah.
But a significant part of that is that we believe in a God who suffered as a human being.
Yeah.
And I keep saying to people, like, you know, I often feel you're here, and it's cliche, right? But you know, people who say, well, we're all just working our way up different sides of the mountain,
right?
And I say, no, we're not. Like that thing only ends one way. Like I suck at climbing a mountain. And like that thing ends with
me. If you know
me.
Mountains, doesn't that mean somebody dies?
Yeah, like
somebody
typically
gets stuck in the mountain and freezes halfway up. Like...
Exactly. I'm the dude who's going to be found like 10 years later, holding my cup of coffee, going like, well, at least he had a good cup of coffee. He didn't bring oxygen, but he had a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And so like the beauty of Christianity is that we believe in a God who came down the mountain.
Yeah.
And, you know, like that's not exactly how the Bible talks about it.
Sure.
But using that analogy, we believe in a God who saw us all dying, trying to make it up the mountain, and said, I better do something about that.
Right. And the common misconception that, you know, it was so that God could know the human experience, it's entirely the opposite. It's so that we could know the divine experience, and so that we could know the human experience from him who's fully human.
Right.
And that's the beauty of it, is that it's not Jesus experiencing life and learning from the human way. It's us looking at how he lived and saying, alrighty, let it out. He was like, and I love that story of Lazarus is sort of the, you know, the epitome of like, I know I can bring him back. I know I'm literally going to do that in 5 minutes. But right now, I miss my friend and I'm broken about it, and I can see that you're broken about it, and that's the beautiful thing too. Within that very story is him validating the grief of Martha and Mary, of saying like, no, your brother's dead. I get it. I'm gonna bring him back. It's gonna be awesome. Just watch. But like, it's okay. And again, it's where you're at. Like, of course you're sad. I wasn't here. You thought I should have been.
Yep.
It's amazing.
No, exactly. And so you say, you know, we learn, in a sense, we learn what it means to be fully human.
Yeah.
We talk about at our church being, like, becoming and being fully alive. And, you know, obviously we believe that happens in relationship to Jesus, but it actually happens in learning to become like Jesus.
Yeah.
And so if Jesus demonstrated what it meant to be fully alive, well, we know that includes grief.
Right. It includes grief, all the emotions of life.
Yeah.
So the great thing about this idea is that it doesn't just apply to kids, right? I think most of the time when we have something difficult happen in the lives of those closest to us, we think that we need to have the perfect answer, right? You think that you need to have the perfect word or response or text, like you pick up your phone and you write a text message and then you delete it 5 times, reshaping it. You try to have the perfect words that are going to help that friend or family member or kid or, you know, husband, wife, whoever it is, whatever they've gone through. And the reality is, you can't have the perfect response. You're not going to write the perfect text or the perfect email, the perfect phone call. You're not going to say the exact, you know, words in perfect sequence that just magically fixes whatever it is they're going through. The best thing you can do when someone you love is hurting is simply be there for them. And that's the basic principle of Alex's whole book. It's that we give permission to kids to feel the emotions that they're feeling, and we set them within the context of the hope of the gospel. And I think that's a beautiful way to approach anybody who is going through a moment of pain and suffering. Approach them with these two ideas. Validate what they're going through. Say, it's okay to actually be feeling the way you're feeling. You don't need to be happy in this moment. I'm going to sit with you in it. I'm going to let you feel what you're feeling, and then you help them shape it and see it and experience it in light of the gospel. That's it. And so don't try to come up with the perfect response. Don't try to come up with the perfect text to send. Simply show up and be there. And you're going to be better for it. That person's going to be better for it. And I think actually we as a church will be better for it when we stop pretending like everybody has to be happy all the time. Don't get me wrong, I love when people are happy, and I myself love when I get to experience happiness and even joy. But the reality is it doesn't happen all the time. So there are just two ideas to help you through a difficult time when someone you love is going through pain and suffering. That's it. I hope you like these videos, and I hope they're helpful. I hope they make you think about your faith and how to make it a little bit more practical. I hope they help you look at the Bible with a little bit of a different lens, and I hope that they help you experience a God who loves you and wants you to know life and life to the full. That's what we're all about. And so again, if you like this video, hit like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me. It helps us out, and we would love to have you along for the ride as we move into 2020.